What is up, guys? I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're covering r/malicious compliance. What is this mad lad doing? I don't even know anymore. But if you want to skip the initial waffle, timestamps are in the description below and along the timeline. But if you are new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too, as it all really helps out our channel. A huge thank you to each and every one of you for joining us today. You are truly appreciated. And just a huge thank you. That's all I can say these days. Thank you. And let's get in to today's stories. Much love, guys. Our first story comes from Unkempt27. Take breaks only within the breaks policy. Okay. This happened a few years ago when working for a well-known UK retailer. Not just any retailer, if you know what I mean. I was working on the store operations team at the time, meaning I was responsible for opening or closing the store, dealing with contractors, taking deliveries, supporting the shop floor staff by picking orders to fill the shelves, etc. When on the early shift, 3 or 4 of us would open the store at 5 AM. We'd do our safety checks and start taking the clothing and food deliveries. We'd also segregate the deliveries, put all produce together, all desserts together, etc. Ready for the shop floor staff starting at 7 so they could fill the shelves easier. We'd then be sending stock up to the shop floor. 1 or 2 of us would be on the shop floor clearing empty trays, tidying up packaging, bringing up and sending down stock, etc. With another 1 or 2 downstairs sorting the stock that came back, putting it in the cold room, sorting the dates, etc. Busy mornings. We were told we couldn't go for a break whilst this was going on, as it was all hands on deck, and we also couldn't go for our breaks together afterwards, as some had to be available for anything that came up. Fine, but it would sometimes be maybe 10:30 or 11 by the time we got our break, 5 to 6 hours after starting the shift. Add into this that we've been working in the cold room, a walk-in fridge. It really would have been nice to have a sit down with a hot drink. Company policy was to give a break at least every 4 hours, which we weren't getting. However, we didn't mind this too much. We understood that we needed to be more flexible. But some mornings, if a delivery was running late, or if we got the first one, clothing, done early, say by 5:45, and the next one, food, wasn't due till 6, we'd pop to the canteen for a quick coffee, or chill out on the loading bay chatting and waiting for the next delivery. One morning, we all got called up to the manager's office. Someone had complained that we were taking unauthorised breaks. I explained, I was on a staff panel at the time, kind of like an internal union, about how we're being flexible when we're not getting a break for 5 to 6 hours when everyone else in the shop got one every 3 to 4 hours, but it fell on deaf ears. We were given a written warning and told that we must not take unauthorised breaks, and if we did have some downtime, we had to fill it by starting to stock shelves ourselves. So we decided to make sure none of us went over the 4-hour threshold for breaks. That meant taking our breaks from around 8 AM, right in the middle of when we were needed most. Staff complained that they couldn't get their stock quick enough, or that the shop floor was a mess, that we shouldn't be taking breaks so early. But we're starting at 5 AM and taking a break at 8, any different from them starting at 7 and getting their break at 10. Suffice to say, after a few days of this, we went back to normal, and no one complained about us grabbing a quick coffee again. And too true, you know, I hate it when businesses do this. They want you to be flexible on their hours, so they can get things done, but they're not willing to go the other way round. Like, you can't take a 10-minute break after working your ass off for 5 to 6 hours in a cold room. You know, it takes the piss a bit, to be quite honest. And fair play for sticking to your guns and doing that, because many people would fold, just, you know, be happy that you got a job. And I always hate that. I always hate that sort of saying that you need to be happy that you got a job. You know, a job works both ways. They need to be flexible with you, they need to work with you, and they need to appreciate you a bit more, I think. But let's have a look at the comments below to see what they say about this story. Cussler fan says, did they withdraw the written warning? I probably wouldn't change from the authorised break schedule until they did. OP replies, nope, lol. I left not long after though, as did a couple of others. Granny Grit says, at my job they have policies and processes we're absolutely supposed to follow. Most of them are created by people who have never actually done the job. If you want to change a policy/process, the absolutely best way to do that is to follow it to the letter and make sure everyone else does too. Then you can get it reviewed, an agreement to change the policy to accurately reflect actual workplace processes. I had one of the same situations once. One of my first jobs was in a warehouse, and you know, in this job, warehouse were pretty much treated like scum. Like, we were the workhorses of the place, and we done jobs that were sort of outside of our job description constantly. And you know, I didn't mind for a little bit. You know, I've gone pretty much against what I've said earlier here, but I didn't mind for a little bit until they they came in with this thing called a 5S policy. I can't remember what it is, safety, sustain, and all this sort of stuff. It's an American system apparently. And there was like spot checks where you had to check, like say to someone during the day, like stop, I'm doing a safety check. Like on simple things like walking up and down the stairs. It was absolutely ridiculous. But one day they asked us to carry like a desk down the stairs, and one of the policies was that we always had to have one hand on the rail while walking down the stairs. So carrying a desk down was pretty much near impossible because of the size of this desk. And when I refused, all hell kicked off. They gave me a warning. I eventually got it revoked because of their own policies in the end. But still, treating the warehouse like scum didn't change very much. You know, pretty shitty story in the end. But I would love to know if you've ever had a situation the same before. So let me know in the comments below. And our next story is from Lagonus. You refuse me to call in sick. You're breaking the law. After reading all these great stories here, which gave me a lot of enjoyment, I wanted to share my story as well. I want to emphasize that I did not want this to end the way it did, but I also had no say in it. Around 10 years ago, I was working as a contractor for a large Asian multinational who has its roots in the tech industry. A small note, I am working for a company who specialises in contracting specialists in certain fields to other companies. My actual employer has not much to do with this story. I worked for company X, who contracted me out to the multinational, who contracted me out to a large aviation company in Western Europe. It's a weird but common setup in Europe. I've worked there for a good 6 years on the on-site support department. It was a job to support just shy of 10,000 employees with computer issues, new software, hardware swaps, etc, etc. I personally am specialised in VIP support, which is a separate role. Due to that, the higher up management are mainly older men who have a bit of a manual. You need to talk to them in a specific way, or they don't understand it and get very defensive. At a certain point in this position, I noticed that I was getting random pain streaks in my groin area. I'd been walking with this pain for almost 2 months. In my mind, I already knew how the test would turn out, but I was in denial for a long time. I did not want to believe that I could possibly be sick, as I never had any medical issues in my life. At a certain morning, the pain got terrible, and I felt one of my testicles felt like it was made of stone, and when I touched it, my body wouldn't feel/register it. Due to the experience with my family members and neighbours/friends, I knew instantly what it was: testicular cancer. I needed no test for that. I called my manager immediately, telling him that I needed to call in sick, to see a doctor as soon as possible. He responded by telling me that I could not call in sick due to the workload I had on me, and had a few important requests that I needed to complete that only I could do. This was with VIP employees. I explained to him that this was very important, while I did not give him any details as I am not required to disclose what I need to leave sick for. He flat out denied my sick leave. Let me explain, in my country you are by law entitled to sick leave for multiple years, while the employer cannot punish you, nor can they do anything against it. Given that you actively work with an independent company doctor to improve the situation, answer to requests from them and checking up every now and then. My manager declining me to see a doctor meant he was breaking the constitution. Now, here is the malicious compliance. I decided that I did not want to fight this battle, and I did come in that day after sending him an email, which stated that I cancelled my doctor visit that day on request/demand of my manager, and that I would be excused the next day to see my doctor. When the next day came, 2 things happened. 1, my biggest fear came out, which I dreaded for months. I was indeed diagnosed with testicular cancer, and according to my doctor, I need to have my surgery immediately. The time from diagnosis at my local doctor to laying on the table in a city 30 minutes away was less than 1.5 hours. After the surgery, they explained to me that I was just in time, because else it would have been way worse than it is now, and that I had metastasizes to 3 different lymph glands. 2, the day after my surgery, I had a big smile on my face, thanks to my morphine and the expectation of my next action. I could now call my manager to tell him I would not be coming in work for a while due to cancer. The response is something that I will never forget. He was quiet for close to a minute as he realised that he refused me to go to the doctor while I had cancer, and responded that he understood and that if I needed something, I could give him a call. When I came home from hospital 2 days later, the aviation company, the customer of my manager, sent me a very large fruit basket and a card signed by all my colleagues to wish me well. After 3 months of radiation therapy, chemo, movies and boredom, I called the CIO of the aviation company directly because I could not reach my manager, with a request that if I was allowed to work from home, while I continued my recovery. He of course flat out declined that immediately and told me that I should take all the time I need and not to even think about work. He also reminded me that I am being paid my full salary despite me working or not, and that I should try to enjoy that luxury. I told him that I understood and that once I got back that we needed to have a discussion. The day that I got back, 9 months later, I was welcomed by all my colleagues. I explained to all of them at once what happened exactly, as my employer was not allowed to share any details of my sick leave. After this, everybody individually welcomed me personally, and that was it. I went back to work without any special attention. I'm not the type of person who wants to be treated differently because of something that happened to anyone. The same day, the CIO of the aviation company walked by and asked me to have a one-on-one meeting with him, where I explained how everything went and that I'm glad to be back. He reminded me what I told him 9 months before, that I wanted to discuss something with him. I was surprised he remembered that, as I wasn't even thinking about bringing it up. I explained everything in regards to my manager, that he denied my sick leave on the grounds that I had work to do and that he could not give to other employees. I also showed him the email which stated everything. Kids, always keep a paper trail. I did not think anything about it and expected him to have a talk with my manager. That is not correct how he handled this. Boy, was I wrong. The very next day, my manager took me aside and profusely apologised for what happened, just before he mentioned that he had to leave for a meeting to attend the headquarters of his employer. The next day, that the CIO contacted the manager, his employer, with a demand that he would be replaced. He also trusted them to take necessary actions against him, and that they should be happy that I did not intend to take any legal action against them or the aviation company. After another meeting between me and management from both companies, the manager was fired on the spot. I worked there for 2 more years, after which I left for a job offer I could not refuse. I gladly have beaten cancer and have been healthy for a while now. Firstly, you got to say congratulations on beating cancer. You know, to hear that, to hear those words is just absolutely a godsend for me, you know, to hear someone's beaten that bloody awful disease. And well done for beating that shitty manager who forced you to go into work. I mean, you could have refused. I knew you could have refused, but pretty much pressured you to go into work when you had those troubles. Shh, absolutely shitty. And we're going to have a look at the comments below to see what we can find. The Golgoloth says, isn't great when there are great social security nets in place to protect employees and paid sick leave. iRock Dewclaw says, great company you work for. My company was similarly supportive of my treatment too. Really, I hope CEOs are watching this, because with chemo, radiation and all the effects, last thing you need is workplace drama and wondering whether your job is secure. Stress plays a huge part in your recovery. Joe Bear 1978 says, a real man would have done the surgery himself on his lunch. /sarcasm. But seriously, congratulations on beating cancer. Green Fieldman says, I thought it'd take balls to do something like that, but I guess you proved me wrong. OP Reply says, it literally took one of my balls. Good sense of humour too. Now, I'm going to turn this to you guys. How do you think OP handled this situation? Let me know in the comments below. Our next story is from SpongeBob No Pants. Try to become our boss, screw over employees and order us to follow our contract exactly how it's written. Let's see how this works out. Before the company was sold and then driven into the ground by the new owners, I worked as a patrol supervisor for a high-end security company. Now let's explain some things that are relevant to the story. Our supervisors got salary. Our normal working week was 48 hours, 4 12-hour days. Anything over that, we got hour for hour paid time, off in lieu of a normal vacation. Our contract stated that if a supervisor worked any position that wasn't as the supervisor on duty, they were to be paid an hourly rate based on the average hourly salary rate. Contract stated 2 more important things: that the company can buy paid time off for 85% or more of its value if the employee agrees. Said employee can also offer to sell it back for any amount. 2 contracts are valid for 1 year. If the employee wants to renegotiate before that time, the employer has to pay so much for each month the contract is still valid for. Not the exact phrasing, it's been a while, but you get the idea. For clarity, we're 5 months into our current contract at the time. Now the owner, I call John, was awesome. He expected a lot but treated everyone well, gave his supervisors almost free reign, made sure our officers had the best equipment to protect themselves, and was generally just a good guy, so we didn't give him much flack over little things. Now we asked for, and he gave, the supervisors a discretionary fund for our officers. On most nights we had an on-call officer, some nights we didn't. If we needed to call someone in, we could say, hey, come in and work and I'll buy you lunch. Or, you want to come in but don't have the gas to get to your region and back? Meet me at this gas station and I will buy you some gas. Little things to keep the supervisors from having to work regions and do our jobs, plus it made everyone happy. Normal cost was around $450 to $500 a month, but saved the company thousands. He wanted a low turnover company and found ways to keep experienced people applying and staying with the company. Enter the new HR rep, Mary. Well, she calls a meeting with her supervisors. She has some things she needs to discuss. So next morning, me and my fellow 2 supervisors show up. On the table was an end to the discretionary fund. It cost the company too much, she said, and stuck it to us after explaining how it saved money. Also, without going into specifics, we had to work exactly like our employment contract stated, no deviating. Also, any requests for promotions among the officers needed to be approved by her, which to her, they were just a payroll number, and a bunch of other things designed to put herself between us and John and become our boss. Now, none of us had ever really read the whole contract, so at the end we went over it without her. Turns out there are loopholes we could drive a truck through, but legally valid. Now, we could have taken this to John, but we knew he would say to give it a chance, so we did. Seeing we were salary, our pay period was monthly, 30 days instead of weekly. We also knew John didn't read certain emails or payroll until the end of the month, so we set out to do exactly as she asked, stick to the contract. So we each worked our 48 hours and other days of the week. I ended up working 24 days out of that month, my normal 48 hours as a supervisor plus an additional 24 to 36 hours a week as a region patrol officer. Mostly because without our fund, it was getting almost impossible to get people to come in on their days off. So we split it up, but I did the majority. So we submitted a forms for not only pay time off for those extra shifts, but a pay request for hourly for each extra shift, which for me was $18.75 an hour for each one. I never went into hourly overtime for the week. At the end of 27 days, I accumulated over 100 hours of pay time off from the extra shifts and going overtime on my supervisor's shifts. John was added to the email also, but the subject was end of the month forms, which means he wouldn't read them until the end of the month to verify the ones Mary gave him were correct. In other words, we double dipped like a son of a bitch that month. Now fast forward 27 days after the meeting, and John sends us an email stating he was aware of the situation and scheduled a meeting for 8 AM the next day. We get in there and he doesn't look happy, but Mary looks smugged, so we got worried it might have backfired, until John started, and basically it went like this. Gentlemen, Mary told me about your meeting. She didn't discuss it with me first, or I'd have stopped it. I also know if you would have come to me, I would have said to try it out. Also, HR will never be in charge of the supervisors. You work for me and me alone. So, and holds up 3 envelopes and hands them out. Here is your hourly pay for being region officers this month. Your normal pay comes at the end of normal time. Also, hands out another envelope to each of us. This is my attempt to buy back all your paid time off. You gained this month at 90%. If you don't accept, give me the check back. None of us did. Now here is another check each for the contract buyout, and I will have a new one ready in the morning. I also have refilled and reactivated the cards on your discretionary fund, so use it as needed, and if you run out before the end of the month, email me. He then looks over at Mary and says, so Mary, how much did your idea save the company? Mary says, $500, John. John replies, no Mary, it cost the company $12,000. That's what those checks total. Sure, SpongeBob got the lion's share, but the man is a work animal. It cost me $12,000. Then Mary said something that I'm sure she got fired for. She said, come on John, it's just words on a piece of paper and not really legally binding. Besides, the use of loopholes in contract is illegal. That got us all staring at her. We may not have attended business school, but we're smart enough to know she was not only wrong, but dead wrong. Yeah, the next day, John sent out an email saying the position was open and anyone interested send in their resumes. P.S. The only charges to our contract was adding we could get PTO or our hourly rate. Wow. Silly Mary. It's one of those times I kind of wish I was a fly on the wall in that office at the time when that was going on, just so I could watch Mary's face slowly turn from smug to, oh shit. Let's have a look at the comments below to see what we can find. Stormy Sky says, nice. It's funny, my fiance ended up in a bad work environment, almost due to a manager named Mary. When I got to that part of your post, I exclaimed, it's always Mary. Then went and got him to read the post together. I'm glad everything worked out for you and your co-workers. Elt177 says, another lesson that shouldn't have to be relearned. New supervisors who make changes simply to mark their territory and don't bother check first are idiots and need to be fired immediately. And Becky says, it's always a Mary unless it's a Margot. I worked for her for 10 years and hated her with a passion. Closart says, employment would be so much better if there were more Johns in the world. And now I'm going to turn it to you guys. What do you guys think of this story? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's stories at Malicious Compliance. I thought we'd try something else because I had a bit of extra time on my hands. If you did enjoy, please let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more Malicious Compliance in the future, as I do like it myself, along with the revenge stories too. Thank you for being here once again, guys. And I will see you in the next one, hopefully. Take care. Much love.